The death game, play or die. It was supposed to be just another viral challenge, the kind you see all over social media with adrenaline junkies and thrill seekers flaunting their bravado. When the play or die escape room hit the internet, it was an instant sensation. No one really knew who created it. There were no sponsors, no brands attached, but the videos of people taking the challenge were everywhere. Winners walked away with $1 million cash. Losers, well, the videos always cut off before showing what happened to them. Alex was an aspiring streamer, desperate to blow up online. He'd been grinding for years, trying everything from pranks to reaction videos, but his follower count was stagnant. When he got an anonymous email inviting him to join Play or Die, he thought his moment had finally come. The email promised a chance at fame, fortune, and, most importantly, proof he wasn't just another nobody. The rules were simple. You enter the game alone. Solve all puzzles within the given time limit. Fail, and you forfeit your prize and your life. Alex figured the life or death part was just marketing hype, a way to scare people and make the game more dramatic. He'd watched others participate and thought he knew what to expect. A creepy atmosphere, tough riddles, maybe some fake scares. It was nothing he couldn't handle. The night of the event, he was blindfolded and driven to the secret location. When the blindfold came off, Alex found himself standing in front of an abandoned warehouse. The building loomed in the moonlight, its windows shattered, its brick walls covered in graffiti. A flickering neon sign over the entrance read, "Play or Die." He hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of the choice before him. But then he remembered the millions of views waiting for him, the fame, the money. He pulled out his phone and started streaming. "What's up, guys? It's your boy Alex, and tonight we're taking on the Play or Die challenge. Let's see if I've got what it takes to beat this thing." His viewers flooded the chat with encouragement and laughing emojis. Inside, the air was damp and smelled of rust and decay. The first room was dimly lit, with a single desk in the center. On it was an old CRT monitor and a keyboard. When Alex approached, the screen flickered to life, displaying a grainy video feed of a masked figure. "Welcome to the game." The voice distortedly crackled. "Your time begins now. Solve the riddle or be eliminated." The screen changed, displaying the riddle. "I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but I come alive with the wind. What am I?" Alex typed in echo, his hands trembling slightly. The screen blinked green. Correct. A door creaked open behind him, revealing the next room. He stepped through, finding himself in what looked like a morgue. Cold steel tables lined the walls, and there was a faint smell of formaldehyde. On one of the tables was a human-shaped mannequin with its chest cavity exposed. A note was pinned to its torso. "Find the key inside, but beware what you wake." Alex swallowed hard. The mannequin looked so real it made his stomach turn, but the timer on the wall showed 5 minutes remaining, and he wasn't about to quit now. He reached into the mannequin's chest, feeling around for the key. The synthetic flesh was wet and warm, which shouldn't have been possible. Just as his fingers closed around the cold metal of the key, the mannequin's eyes snapped open. It let out a bone-chilling scream as its hand clamped onto Alex's wrist. He screamed too, yanking his arm free and stumbling backward. The mannequin sat up, its head twisting at an unnatural angle to follow him. Heart pounding, Alex sprinted for the next door, unlocking it with shaky hands. The next room was worse. It was a maze of mirrors, each one reflecting distorted versions of him. Some mirrors made him look taller or shorter, but others showed him as grotesque and mangled, his flesh peeling away to reveal the bone beneath. As he moved through the maze, the reflections began moving on their own. He turned a corner and came face to face with one of the distorted versions of himself. Its hollow eyes stared at him, its mouth hanging open in a silent scream. Before Alex could react, it lunged through the mirror, shattering the glass as it tackled him to the floor. It wasn't just a reflection, it was real. He wrestled with the creature, its cold, bony fingers wrapping around his throat. The timer on the wall ticked down to the final seconds. Desperate, Alex grabbed a shard of broken glass and plunged it into the creature's chest. It dissolved into a thick black smoke, and the door to the final room swung open. Alex staggered through, gasping for air. The final room was empty except for a single chair in the center. On it was a briefcase. He approached cautiously, opening it to reveal stacks of crisp $100 bills. He'd won, but as he reached for the money, the lights went out. The door slammed shut behind him, and the distorted voice from the monitor returned. "You won the game," it said, "but no one ever leaves." The last thing Alex saw before everything went black was his own reflection in the briefcase lid, smiling back at him, the red room code. It started with a whisper, a rumor that spread through gaming forums and late-night Discord chats about a mysterious game called the Red Room Code. No one knew who made it, but everyone agreed on one thing. Once you played, your life would never be the same. The game wasn't listed on any app store or official site. You had to be invited. One night, Liam, a college freshman and avid gamer, got the invite from an anonymous user while browsing a forum dedicated to obscure games. The message was simple. "You've been chosen to enter the Red Room. Download at your own risk. Complete the game to survive." Attached was a link. Liam hesitated for a moment, staring at the blinking cursor on his screen. It was probably just some edgy ARG, alternate reality game, he thought. Nothing to take seriously. Still, his curiosity got the better of him. He clicked the link, and a small black window popped up on his desktop. The download began automatically. The file installed itself without asking for permissions, which was strange, but Liam shrugged it off. A pixelated red door appeared on his desktop. Below it, glowing text read, "Enter." Liam clicked, and the screen went black. Moments later, grainy text appeared in the center of the screen. "Welcome to the Red Room. There are 3 levels, each one harder than the last. Complete all 3 to win. Quit, and we'll come for you. Begin." He laughed nervously. "All right, let's see what kind of creepypasta nonsense this is." He clicked, "Yes." Level 1. The Watcher. The game launched into a first-person perspective. Liam was in a dimly lit house, armed only with a flashlight. A timer in the corner of the screen began counting down from 10 minutes. "Find the key to escape," the game instructed. He started exploring, opening drawers and cupboards, searching for the key. The house was eerily quiet, with faint whispers in the background that grew louder as time passed. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the screen. "Okay, great. Cheap jump scares," Liam muttered, trying to stay calm. The whispers turned into harsh breathing. In the distance, he saw a tall, faceless figure standing at the end of a hallway. Its head tilted unnaturally, as if it were watching him. The figure began moving toward him, its footsteps echoing loudly. Liam's pulse quickened as he frantically searched for the key. Finally, he found it inside a closet and sprinted to the front door. He escaped just as the timer hit 0. The screen went black, then displayed a new message. Level 1 complete. Do not stop playing. Level 2, The mirror game. The second level dropped him into a different setting, a small windowless room with walls covered in mirrors. In the center of the room was a single chair. The game's instructions appeared. Sit and face yourself. Survive the reflection. Survive the reflection? What does that even mean? Liam said aloud, his voice shaky. But the game wouldn't progress unless he followed the rules. He clicked on the chair, and the screen showed him sitting down, staring into a mirror. At first, his reflection looked normal, tired eyes, messy hair, but then it began to change. His reflection grinned, even though his own face stayed neutral. Slowly, its eyes turned black, and blood began dripping from its mouth. The reflection spoke, its voice deep and distorted. "You shouldn't have come here." Liam tried to move, but his keyboard and mouse stopped responding. On screen, his reflection leaned closer to the mirror, pressing its hands against the glass. Cracks began to spiderweb across the surface. "Let me out," it hissed. Suddenly, the lights in Liam's room flickered, and the temperature dropped. He swore he saw movement in the corner of his eye, a shadow shifting in the darkness. He ripped off his headphones and turned on the lights, his heart pounding. When he looked back at the screen, the reflection was gone, replaced by a message. "Level 2 complete. Do not stop playing." Level 3. The Visitor. The final level began immediately. This time, Liam's screen displayed his own bedroom, perfectly recreated in the game. He froze. How did it know what his room looked like? Every detail was identical. The posters on the wall, the cluttered desk, even the half-empty can of soda by his keyboard. A message appeared. "The visitor is here. Hide." A chill ran down Liam's spine. He heard a creak behind him, like someone stepping on the wooden floor of his dorm. His stomach dropped. "It's just the game messing with me," he whispered, trying to convince himself. But the creaking grew louder. On the screen, he saw a figure enter his virtual bedroom. It was tall and thin, with pale, featureless skin and unnaturally long limbs. The visitor moved slowly, scanning the room as if searching for something. Then Liam realized it wasn't just moving in the game. The sounds of footsteps were coming from his actual room. Terrified, he grabbed his phone to call for help, but his screen displayed the same chilling message. "No phones. Finish the game." He looked back at his monitor. The visitor was standing in front of his virtual desk, staring directly at the screen. Slowly, its head turned to look out from the monitor, as though it could see him. A notification popped up. "Time is running out. Hide." Liam dove under his bed, clutching his phone like a lifeline. He could hear his own breathing, ragged and loud in the silence. From his hiding spot, he saw the shadows of long fingers creeping beneath the door. In the game, the visitor began pacing, its movements erratic and jerky. Liam's timer was down to its final seconds. He had no idea what to do. Suddenly, the screen went black, and a final message appeared. "You lost." Liam's bedroom door creaked open. To this day, no one knows what happened to him. His dorm room was found empty, with the computer still on. The screen displayed the pixelated red door, glowing faintly beneath the words, "Waiting for the next player. Game over. The virtual nightmare." The gaming world was abuzz with the release of Euphoria VR, an advanced virtual reality game touted as the most immersive experience ever created. Unlike traditional VR games, Euphoria claimed to sync directly with the player's brain through a neural interface, making every sight, sound, and sensation feel indistinguishably real. It was the future of gaming, and everyone wanted in. Maya was no exception. A die-hard gamer and tech enthusiast, she had saved for months to afford the expensive headset. When it finally arrived, she tore open the box and set everything up in record time. The sleek black helmet hummed faintly as it booted up. A voice greeted her, smooth and almost human. "Welcome to Euphoria. Are you ready to escape reality?" She smirked and replied, "Let's do this." After a brief calibration process, the screen faded to black. Then Maya found herself standing in a lush forest, the sunlight filtering through the trees. Birds chirped overhead, and a cool breeze brushed against her skin. It was breathtaking, too real. She could feel everything, from the texture of the dirt beneath her boots to the scent of pine in the air. "Wow," she whispered. A holographic menu appeared in front of her, listing various game modes: adventure, puzzle, combat, survival. Without hesitation, Maya chose survival. She'd always been drawn to horror games, and the thought of experiencing one in full immersion thrilled her. The forest dissolved, replaced by a sprawling, abandoned city. The buildings were crumbling, and the air was thick with an unnatural fog. A haunting melody echoed faintly, sending chills down her spine. "Your objective," the voice announced, "is simple: survive until sunrise." Maya grinned. "Piece of cake." A clock appeared in the corner of her vision, showing the time. 9 p.m. Sunrise was at 6 a.m. She had 9 hours to endure. Hour 1. The first glimpse. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Maya wandered through the empty streets, scavenging supplies. She found a flashlight, some batteries, and a rusted crowbar for defense. The game's atmosphere was eerie, but she'd played scarier things before. Then, at exactly 10 p.m., she heard it. A low, guttural growl coming from the shadows. She froze, gripping the crowbar tightly. "Here we go," she muttered, expecting some sort of monster to charge at her. But nothing happened. She continued walking, her flashlight cutting through the fog. The growling followed her, growing louder and more menacing. It seemed to be everywhere, above her, behind her, right next to her ear. Her heart pounded as she swung the flashlight around, desperate to find the source. Then she saw it. A figure stood at the end of the street, barely visible through the haze. It was tall and humanoid, but its movements were unnatural, like a marionette being jerked by invisible strings. Its face, or lack thereof, was the most horrifying part. It was smooth, blank, featureless. "Okay, that's creepy," Maya said, trying to steady her nerves. She took a cautious step forward, but the figure vanished, dissolving into the mist. Hour 3. The rules change. By 11 p.m., the city seemed alive. Doors creaked open and slammed shut on their own. Shadows moved in the periphery of her vision, but every time she turned, there was nothing there. Her flashlight began flickering, despite the fresh batteries she'd found earlier. The voice returned, colder this time. "Rule update: stay in the light." "What light?" Maya snapped, spinning in a circle. There were no streetlights, no fires, no visible sources of illumination. Just her faltering flashlight. Suddenly the growling returned, louder and closer than ever. Panic set in as she sprinted into the nearest building. Inside, she found a single lamp flickering in the corner. She stood under its glow, clutching the crowbar, as the growls circled the building. Something scratched at the walls. Slow, deliberate. Maya's breath hitched as the lamp began to dim. She searched the room frantically and spotted a trap door in the floor. Without thinking, she flung it open and climbed down, landing in a dark basement. Hour 5. Reality begins to slip by 1 a.m. Maya wasn't sure what was real anymore. The line between the game and her own mind had started to blur. The neural interface made everything feel so vivid. The cold sweat on her skin, the ache in her legs from running, the raw fear in her chest. She wandered the maze-like corridors of the basement, her flashlight reduced to a dim flicker. Occasionally she'd hear footsteps behind her, but every time she turned, she was alone. Or so she thought. At one point, she caught her reflection in a cracked mirror hanging on the wall. Her face looked pale and gaunt, her eyes sunken. But as she leaned closer, her reflection didn't mimic her movements. It grinned. "Keep going," it whispered, its voice low and distorted. Maya stumbled back, the flashlight slipping from her grasp. When she bent to pick it up, she saw something moving in the shadows behind her. Hour 8, the final stretch. By 5 a.m., Maya was exhausted. She'd lost track of time, her surroundings, even herself. The game had become a waking nightmare. She wasn't sure if she was even still in her room, wearing the headset, or if she'd been dragged somewhere else entirely. The voice returned one final time. "Congratulations, survivor. 1 hour remains, but you are not alone." Maya's stomach dropped. She turned a corner and came face to face with the faceless figure from before. But this time, there were dozens of them, their blank heads tilting in unison as they stepped toward her. She ran. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to keep moving. Her lungs burned, her legs felt like lead, but she couldn't stop. The clock in her vision ticked down the final seconds, 5:59 a.m. With a desperate scream, she threw herself through a doorway, just as the sun began to rise. The aftermath. Maya ripped off the headset, gasping for air. She was back in her room, safe and sound, or so it seemed. Her phone buzzed. A notification from an unknown number popped up. "Congratulations, survivor. Welcome to Level 2. She looked at her reflection in the screen. It grinned back at her. "The game that knows you." It started as a harmless download, a casual puzzle game called Echoes that appeared out of nowhere on app stores. The description was vague. Solve puzzles, earn prizes, and unlock the truth. It had no reviews, no trailer, nothing but a single eerie screenshot showing a glowing maze with strange symbols scattered across it. The download was free, so naturally, millions of people gave it a shot. Among them was Rachel, a high school senior killing time between classes. Rachel loved mobile games, especially ones that were quick and easy to play. Echoes seemed like the perfect distraction. The moment she opened it, the game greeted her by name. "Welcome, Rachel." Her brow furrowed. Weird. Must be linked to my phone's account. She shrugged and tapped Start. The first few levels were simple enough. The goal was to guide a glowing orb through a maze while collecting symbols along the way. The catch was that the orb only moved when the screen was dark, so she had to tilt her phone in different directions to create shadows. By the time she finished the first 10 levels, Rachel was hooked. There was something oddly hypnotic about the game's ambient soundtrack, a mix of low hums and faint whispers, and the puzzles grew increasingly challenging in a way that felt rewarding. But then things got strange. Level 11. The first warning. The game's aesthetic shifted dramatically in Level 11. The maze was darker, almost like it had been burned. The symbols Rachel collected now resembled twisted faces, their mouths open in silent screams. When she completed the level, a message popped up. "Are you alone?" Rachel blinked, confused. There were no ads in the game, no notifications, just this cryptic question. She dismissed it and moved on. Level 15. The game watches back. By the time Rachel reached level 15, she began to notice unsettling details. The glowing orb she controlled seemed to move on its own occasionally, as if something invisible was nudging it. The whispers in the background music grew louder, almost like voices murmuring her name. And then the camera on her phone flicked on for a brief moment. She caught the reflection of her face in the screen, illuminated by the dim glow of the maze. Her heart skipped a beat. Did the game just record me? Before she could process what happened, a notification appeared. "Keep playing, Rachel. You're doing so well." Her stomach twisted. How did it know she'd stopped? Level 20. The missing classmate. The next day, Rachel noticed something odd. Her classmate Ethan, who had been raving about echoes the week before, was missing. "Where's Ethan?" Rachel asked during lunch. "He didn't show up," someone said, shrugging. "Probably skipped." Rachel thought back to the last time she'd seen Ethan. He'd been glued to his phone, bragging about how far he'd gotten in the game. "I'm on level 25, he'd said with a smug grin. "It gets crazy after 20. Later that evening, Rachel decided to check his social media. His accounts were eerily quiet, with no posts or activity for over 24 hours. Something about it didn't sit right with her. Ignoring the gnawing unease, she opened Echoes again. Level 21, the personal touch. Level 21 felt different, like the game had been tailored specifically for her. The maze was no longer abstract. It was a recreation of her own neighborhood. She recognized the streets, the intersections, even the little park where she used to walk her dog. Her breathing quickened as she navigated the glowing orb down streets she knew too well. When she reached the end of the maze, another message appeared. "Look outside." She froze. "No way," she muttered, her hands trembling. The whispers in the game grew louder, almost chanting now. Against her better judgment, Rachel set down her phone and pulled back her bedroom curtain. A single street lamp flickered outside. Beneath it, a figure stood motionless, staring up at her window. She couldn't make out their face, but they were holding something that glowed faintly. A phone, just like hers. Rachel's heart thundered in her chest. She dropped the curtain and grabbed her phone to call for help. But before she could, the game displayed a new message. "Don't call. Keep playing." Level 25. The final test. By level 25, Rachel was unraveling. She hadn't been able to sleep. The game wouldn't stop sending her notifications. "Come back, Rachel." It even hijacked her phone's lock screen, displaying eerie, static-filled messages no matter what she did. The final maze wasn't a maze at all. It was her house. The glowing orb began in her bedroom, moving down the hall and into the living room. Rachel stared at the screen, paralyzed. "This isn't real," she whispered, trying to convince herself. But as the orb descended the staircase in the game, she heard the faint creak of real footsteps in her house. She wanted to stop, to delete the app, to throw her phone out the window, but she couldn't. Her hands moved on their own, guiding the orb to the front door. The door in the game opened, so did the one downstairs. Rachel's screen went black, replaced by a final message. "Congratulations, Rachel. You've unlocked the truth." A video feed appeared, showing her bedroom. She was in it, on screen right where she sat, but something was wrong. In the video, her own face turned to the camera. Her eyes were pitch black. Slowly, she smiled. Behind her, the faint glow of another phone lit up the darkness. Rachel's phone was found weeks later, lying in the park near her house. The Echoes app had vanished, leaving no trace. But for those who downloaded it, one thing was certain. Once you play, the game never ends. The Forgotten Cabinet. In a small town, nestled in the middle of nowhere, there was a rundown arcade called Level Up. Once a thriving hangout spot in the 80s, it was now a relic of the past. Most of the machines were broken, their screens cracked and buttons jammed, but a few still worked, offering a flicker of nostalgia for anyone who bothered to visit. Caleb, a bored teenager with too much time on his hands, wandered into the arcade one rainy afternoon. The place smelled like dust and mildew, and the dim lighting made it feel more like a crypt than an entertainment center. The owner, an old man with clouded eyes, barely acknowledged Caleb as he stepped inside. Caleb dropped a few quarters into an old pinball machine and began playing, the metallic clink of the ball echoing in the empty space. But then something caught his eye. Tucked into the back corner, almost hidden in the shadows, was a cabinet he'd never seen before. The machine was jet black, with no logos, no artwork, just a faintly glowing screen that pulsed like a heartbeat. Above the screen, in flickering red letters, were the words, "Play me." "Hey, what's that one?" Caleb asked, nodding toward the cabinet. The old man stiffened. "That one's not for playing," he said gruffly. "It's broken. Leave it alone." But Caleb wasn't listening. The mysterious machine drew him like a moth to a flame. As soon as the old man shuffled into the back room, Caleb approached the cabinet. The screen came to life as he got closer, displaying the words, "One coin, one life." He dug a quarter out of his pocket and hesitated for just a moment before sliding it into the slot. The machine let out a mechanical chime as the screen shifted to reveal a first-person perspective of a dark, labyrinth-like dungeon. Level 1, the labyrinth. The controls were simple, a joystick and a single button. Caleb's character was a shadowy figure with no face or features, holding a torch that cast flickering light on the stone walls. The objective was clear: find the exit. At first it seemed straightforward. Caleb guided his character through the maze, the sound of his footsteps echoing eerily. But the deeper he went, the more unsettling the game became. The torchlight flickered, and strange whispers started playing through the speakers. They were faint at first, but soon grew louder, forming words he couldn't quite understand. Shadows moved in the corners of the screen, always just out of sight. Then came the growl. Low, guttural, and inhuman, it seemed to come from everywhere at once. Caleb's character froze on screen, and a new message appeared. Run. He didn't need to be told twice. Slamming the joystick forward, he sprinted through the maze, the growl growing closer with every step. Something massive and unseen was chasing him, its heavy footsteps shaking the walls of the labyrinth. At the last second, he found a glowing doorway and dove through. The screen flashed. Level 1 complete. Caleb let out a shaky breath, his palms slick with sweat. He was hooked. Level 2, the mirror hall. The next level was even stranger. Caleb's character was now in a long hallway, lined with mirrors. The reflections didn't match his movements. Instead, they seemed to watch him, their hollow eyes tracking every step he took. Occasionally, one of the reflections would disappear entirely, leaving the mirror blank. The whispers returned, louder this time. They sounded like Caleb's own voice, distorted and warped. He noticed something strange. The joystick felt heavier, harder to move, as if the game was resisting him. Halfway down the hallway, one of the mirrors shattered, and something crawled out. It was a twisted version of his character, its limbs bent at unnatural angles, and its face a horrifying mockery of his own. The creature screeched and lunged at him, and Caleb barely managed to dodge. The screen flickered as he fought the monster, the joystick vibrating violently in his hand. He struck it again and again with a virtual sword that had appeared in his inventory, and finally, the creature dissolved into black smoke. A new message appeared. Level 2 complete. Do not stop. Now. Level 3. The deal. The third level began with an unsettling message. To continue, answer truthfully. The screen faded to black, and text appeared. Have you ever lied to someone you love? Caleb hesitated. The joystick didn't work, and the only way to answer was to speak into the cabinet's built-in microphone. Yes, he admitted reluctantly. The screen pulsed, as though it was alive. Have you ever hurt someone on purpose? What kind of game is this? He muttered, but the machine didn't let up. Yes. The questions continued, growing more personal, more invasive, until Caleb was practically shouting at the screen, demanding to know what the point was. Finally, the game spoke back in a deep mechanical voice. You have one final choice. The screen displayed two options. Take the prize. Take the consequence. Caleb didn't understand. What prize? What consequence? His heart raced as he hovered over the joystick, unsure of what to do. After a moment of hesitation, he selected, Take the prize. The machine went silent. The screen displayed a single word, wrong. The cabinet's curse. The joystick locked up, and the cabinet began to emit a low, droning hum. Caleb tried to step back, but it was like his hands were glued to the controls. The screen flashed an image of his own face, terrified, trapped, before the entire arcade seemed to flicker like a glitching game. When the hum stopped, the machine went dark, and Caleb was gone. The old man returned moments later, shaking his head. Another one, he muttered under his breath, pulling a sign from behind the counter. He hung it on the cabinet. It read, Out of order. Weeks later, a new kid wandered into the arcade. He noticed the strange black cabinet in the corner, its screen faintly glowing. The words, Play me, flickered in red. He didn't see the sign the old man had taped to the back. Once you play, the game takes you. Server 666, death is the only escape. It started with a Reddit thread in a gaming forum. A user named @VoidRunner42 posted about a multiplayer horror game called Server 666 that wasn't available on any platform or store. The only way to access it was through an invite sent from an anonymous email. The post was cryptic. If you think you're brave enough to face real fear, play Server 666. But be warned, it's not just a game. If you lose, you'll wish you'd never started. For Mia, a streamer who specialized in creepy indie games, this sounded like the perfect content. Her followers loved watching her play obscure, spooky titles, and she wasn't one to back down from a challenge. When an invite landed in her inbox a few days later, she didn't hesitate. The email contained only a link and the words, Your server awaits. Be ready. Connecting to the server. After clicking the link, Mia was taken to a blank black screen. A single line of text appeared. Welcome, Player 001, searching for teammates. She watched as the server filled up. Player 002 connected player 003, connected player 004, connected 4 players in total. There were no usernames, no profiles, just numbers. A robotic voice spoke through her headset. You are now entering Server 666. The objective, survive until the clock strikes midnight. The game loaded, and Mia found herself in a fog-shrouded forest. Her character was eerily lifelike, mimicking her exact movements. She could hear faint footsteps crunching leaves in the distance, though she wasn't sure if they belonged to her teammates or something else. Her voice chat activated automatically. Hey, can anyone hear me?" Mia asked, trying to sound calm. A male voice responded, "Yeah, player 003 here. This game is weird as hell already." Another voice chimed in, a woman's. "Player 004, anyone know what we're supposed to be doing?" "No clue," said the last player, player 002, his voice clipped and tense. "Let's just stick together. The rules of the game." The first challenge appeared after a few minutes of wandering. A message flashed across the screen. "Rule number 1, don't look behind you." "What the hell does that mean?" asked player 003, laughing nervously. Before anyone could respond, a faint growl echoed through the forest. It was distant at first, but quickly grew louder, accompanied by the sound of something heavy crashing through the underbrush. "Run!" shouted player 002. Mia sprinted, her in-game character perfectly mimicking the panic in her movements. The growling was right behind her, close enough that she could feel the vibration of each thundering step. Her instincts screamed at her to look back, but the rule was clear. "Don't." She heard player 003 scream. His voice cut off abruptly, and his connection dropped from the server. Player 003 eliminated. "What just happened?" Mia shouted. "He must have looked back," said player 002, his voice shaking. Level 2, the ghost town. After the forest, the remaining 3 players found themselves in an abandoned town. The streets were empty, the windows of the buildings shattered, and a cold wind howled through the narrow alleys. A new message appeared. Rule number 2, never speak above a whisper. Mia's headset suddenly amplified every sound. The creak of wooden boards beneath her feet, the rustle of fabric as her character moved. It was so loud it made her wince. "Stay quiet," whispered player 004. "Just find the exit." They moved cautiously through the town, sticking close together. But the silence didn't last long. Somewhere nearby, a door slammed, followed by heavy dragging footsteps. "What is that?" whispered Mia, her voice barely audible. The sound grew closer, and soon they saw it. A figure shuffling toward them. Its body was twisted, its limbs bent at impossible angles, and its head lolled to one side as if its neck had been broken. "Don't let it hear you," player 002 whispered. The creature passed them, moving with an unnatural, jerky gait. For a moment it seemed like they were safe, until player 004's phone vibrated loudly in the background. The creature stopped. Player 004 panicked, letting out a scream, and the thing lunged at her. Mia could only watch as the creature tore into player 004's character, her screams abruptly silenced as her connection dropped. Player 004 eliminated. "2 of us left," said player 002. "Let's just get this over with." Level 3, the house. The final level brought Mia and player 002 to a decrepit mansion. Its doors creaked open as they approached, revealing a pitch-black interior. A new rule appeared. Rule number 3, never separate. "Stick close," said player 002, "no matter what happens." They moved together through the house, their flashlights casting long, flickering shadows. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the walls were covered in strange symbols that seemed to writhe when Mia looked at them. As they ascended the stairs, the robotic voice returned. "One player must make a sacrifice." "What?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. At the top of the stairs, they found a door with 2 handprints painted in blood. The countdown appeared on the screen. 500. "We have to decide," said player 002. "One of us has to stay behind, or we both die." "No way," Mia shot back. "We can figure something out." But the growling returned, louder than ever, and the screen began to glitch. The walls of the house warped, and shadowy figures emerged from the corners, their hollow eyes fixed on the 2 players. "Just go," shouted player 002. "I'll stay." Before he could finish, his character was dragged away by the shadows. His connection dropped, leaving Mia alone. Player 002 eliminated. The final rule. The last door opened, and Mia found herself back in her own room. At least that's what it looked like. Her computer desk, her chair, her bed. It was all there, perfectly recreated in the game. A new message appeared. Rule number 4, finish the game to live. The robotic voice spoke one final time. Turn around. Mia froze. The first rule had been not to look behind her, but now the game was demanding it. Her breathing quickened as she hesitated, her hands trembling on the keyboard. Slowly she turned her character around. Sitting at the in-game desk was herself. Her avatar smiled, its eyes pitch black. Before lunging at the screen, Mia ripped off her headset, her heart pounding. But as she sat there in the silence of her room, she realized something was wrong. Her computer screen was still on, displaying the words, "Game over, you lose." Behind her, she heard the sound of footsteps. The deadly tournament. When an ad for a game called Deathmatch Royale appeared on Zach's feed, he assumed it was just another overhyped Battle Royale knockoff. The teaser trailer showed masked competitors running through dark industrial environments, solving puzzles, setting traps, and hunting one another. What caught Zach's attention, though, was the tagline, "Win $10 million or lose everything. Only the strongest survive." It seemed like an elaborate marketing gimmick, but curiosity got the better of him. Clicking on the ad redirected him to a strange, glitchy website with no branding. The only visible text was, "Sign up to prove you're worthy. One chance only." Zach filled out the form. His screen went black, then flickered back on, showing a countdown timer. Your match begins in 24 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. The invitation. The next day, a black van pulled up outside Zach's apartment. A man dressed in a gray suit stepped out, holding a briefcase. He knocked on Zach's door, handed him the case without a word, and left. Inside was a tablet, a pair of black gloves, and a sleek high-tech headset that looked far more advanced than anything Zach had ever seen. When he powered it on, a distorted voice greeted him. "Congratulations, you've been selected. Prepare yourself." Zach didn't have time to ask questions before the headset activated, scanning his eyes and displaying a virtual interface. A menu appeared. Rules of Deathmatch Royale. Rule number 1, once the game begins, you cannot quit. Rule number 2, eliminate all other players to win. Rule number 3, protect your identity at all costs. A timer appeared, ticking down the last few minutes before the game started. Suddenly the screen shifted to display a live feed of a vast warehouse filled with cameras, spotlights, and massive monitors. The room was empty, except for a few other players standing in the shadows, each wearing the same gloves and headset Zach now held. "You'll compete in real life," the voice said. "This isn't a game. This is survival." The first round. When the timer hit 0, Zach found himself standing in the middle of a maze-like facility. The walls were metal, the air cold and sterile. A voice echoed overhead. "The first round begins now. Objective: survive the maze. Only 8 players will advance." He heard distant footsteps and muffled breathing, other players moving through the labyrinth. Then came a blood-curdling scream. Zach's heart raced as he ran through the maze, the floor vibrating beneath him. He turned a corner and nearly tripped over a player sprawled on the ground, their headset cracked, blood pooling beneath them. "What the hell is this?" Zach whispered, panic setting in. Suddenly a red light flashed down the corridor, accompanied by the whirring of mechanical blades. A drone rounded the corner, its sharp edges glinting. Zach bolted, the sound of spinning metal close behind. He found a hidden alcove and pressed himself into the shadows, barely avoiding detection. When the drone passed, he took a shaky breath and moved on. Eventually, he reached the end of the maze, where 7 other players were already waiting. The voice returned. Round 1 complete. Eliminated players, 4A. Screen lit up, showing grainy footage of the 4 players who hadn't made it. Their faces were blurred, but the brutality of their deaths was clear. One crushed by falling debris, another shredded by drones. Zach realized there was no quitting this game. If you didn't win, you didn't leave. Round 2. The Hunt. The next round took place in a massive factory filled with conveyor belts, molten metal, and towering machinery. The objective was simple: eliminate 1 other player to advance. Zach didn't want to kill anyone. He thought about hiding, waiting for the others to take each other out, but then he heard footsteps behind him. He turned just in time to see a masked figure swinging a pipe. Ducking instinctively, he grabbed a metal rod from the ground and blocked the next attack. "Stop! I don't want to fight," Zach shouted. His attacker didn't respond, pressing forward with relentless aggression. Zach tripped, falling onto a conveyor belt that carried him toward a massive furnace. The other player jumped after him, but Zach fought back, using the rod to push them away. The conveyor belt's speed increased, and Zach realized they were seconds from being incinerated. In desperation, he kicked his attacker off the belt, watching as they fell into the fiery abyss. The voice announced coldly, "Player 094 eliminated. Congratulations. Player 118, you advance." Zach rolled off the belt, his hands shaking. He'd survived, but he couldn't shake the image of the player's masked face disappearing into the flames. The final round. Only 4 players remained. They were brought into a massive arena, surrounded by cameras and a live audience visible on giant monitors. The audience was faceless, blurry silhouettes cheering and clapping as if this was just entertainment. The final objective appeared on the screen: be the last one standing. Zach felt sick. The other players were already circling each other like predators, armed with weapons scavenged from earlier rounds. The first fight broke out quickly. 2 players clashed near a stack of crates, one of them wielding a knife while the other had a crowbar. Zach used the chaos to stay hidden, creeping around the edge of the arena. Eventually, one of the players fell, their screams silenced by the crowbar. The victor didn't have time to celebrate. Another player ambushed them with a wrench, ending their run just as quickly. Now it was just Zach and 1 other player. The final opponent was massive, his mask cracked to reveal a bloodied jaw. He charged at Zach, swinging a pipe like a sledgehammer. Zach barely dodged the first strike, using his agility to stay 1 step ahead. But the arena offered nowhere to hide. The other player caught him with a glancing blow, knocking him to the ground. As the pipe came down for a finishing strike, Zach grabbed a jagged piece of metal and thrust it upward. The other player froze, blood dripping from his chest, before collapsing. The voice echoed once more, "Winner, player 118. The truth revealed. Zach was pulled from the arena, his headset and gloves removed by masked attendants. He was seated in front of a monitor where the distorted voice congratulated him. "You are now a millionaire. The money is yours. But remember, the game never ends." Before Zach could ask what that meant, the screen cut to footage of him in the arena, brutally fighting for his life. The voice continued, "Your victory will be broadcast to millions. They'll watch, they'll cheer, and when the next tournament begins, you'll be their inspiration. Congratulations, player 118. You are free. But as Zack left the building, his mind raced. He wasn't free. He was a prisoner to the memories, the blood on his hands, and the knowledge that somewhere another lucky player was about to receive an invitation. And he knew, deep down, that someday the game would call him back.